Right, this is my first cinematography breakdown in lockdown, and I thought I'd change things up. So I've been looking a lot at The Witcher, and I will continue to explore things within that series, but there are lots of other things that I wanted to touch on as well, and Sex Education, Netflix, again, is something which I really wanted to look at because there's a lot of interesting things that are happening throughout the series. Very, very different from The Witcher on any number of levels. And when we were looking at The Witcher, I was trying to focus mostly on the interior scenes, whether they're day or night or any permutations of that in between. And for the most part, I was avoiding any exteriors. With Sex Education, there are lots of exterior scenes that I'm going to look at. And I'm also going to be touching a bit on the production design that goes into shows like this. Production design perhaps isn't something that you'll be overly familiar with, but when I'm speccing out shoots, when we're looking at adverts that we're doing or big commercial shoots, we're not just thinking we turn up and film. We have to create things. And as soon as you take that tack, you're not just accepting what's there, you're set dressing. So you're deciding what the furnishings are going to be like. You're deciding what the characters are going to be dressed in. You're deciding what kind of car a character drives. And all of that feeds into the narrative and feeds into the overall aesthetic of the piece. Now on top of that, you can layer in your lighting, you can layer in the lens choice, the camera movement choice, all of those different things. But the production design very much helps to inform how everything should look. So let's dive right in. So we're set in the UK with this, and we're actually in the Wye Valley, and I've been there many times myself. Opening shot, pretty mundane seeming. We've got an aerial, we've got some nice just ambient light coming in and the reflection, the water. But what I want to draw attention to here is everything that's going on at the edges of the frame here and here, because this is what's setting the tone for the entire series. And you can't see it really well, but we've got more softening towards the edge of the frame just there. And you can see a little bit of separation in the wavelengths just along the edges. You got that fringing. And you see on this side as well. Within the tree line, you find it harder to spot that kind of thing, but it's definitely there, softening all down here and down here. In the center, it's sharper, but it's still a fairly hazy overall look. It's not like it's super crisp, super clean aesthetic right off the bat. Okay, moving through. We see more examples of this, just looking at the edges of those trees, and you can see that aberration all over the place, and down here, really soft. And that's going to inform the rest of the series all the way through, because the lens choice immediately is telling us that they're going for a slightly imperfect aesthetic. It's not really crisp and clean and modern. It's a little bit more vintage, a little bit more retro seeming. Don't want to dwell on these too long. Establishing the house of our main character, and we're being hit with sunlight just here. It's interesting actually, because we've got this slightly soft, milky aesthetic for the whole thing. We haven't got deep, deep blacks down here, perhaps where you'd expect it. So that is getting no sunlight at all. It's just getting the sky ambient coming in and any bounce off the opposite shore. But it's still actually got a little bit of detail. You can really see all of that imperfection of lens along there and along this top hill line just here. I won't draw all the way along so you can kind of see it just there. All of that is just telling you this is a really vintage lens, or potentially they're using a filter, or maybe they're doing it in post. It's possible, but I reckon based on the whole thing, if you're going for this look and it becomes a feature, then you're going to want to do it in camera. The point would be that it just speeds up the workflow if you know that you're going for it off the bat, and you can just have everything there without having to do any work at all. Right, this is the introduction to our main character. A reasonably nice setup. We've got obviously all the light that's being occluded by him in the pillow just there. Obviously the direction is coming from over here. And then as soon as we get over this side with that, we are very much into shadow, although you can still see along the edge just there, we've got our contrast, and you can see along that edge, we have that little aberration just down here. It's a terribly unstraight line that I've drawn there. In his eyes, you get the catchlight, and that looks fairly round actually. So you can imagine off to the side here, we've just got a softbox, and that's just beaming across to him. I don't think there's anything else really to call out with that. It's a relatively straightforward setup. His nose on this side is blocking the light as we go down, but it's fairly soft, so we're not going to be looking at really high contrast ratios for the most part within this series. It's a lot lighter than everything we saw in The Witcher. It's a lot more friendly than everything we saw in The Witcher. So don't expect those same hefty contrast ratios. They do happen occasionally, but mostly we're looking at this kind of thing where we've got a downside and a key side, and there's not so much contrast between the two of them. Next. So he starts to get out of bed. Now this is what it's all about for me. Shafts of light. They are absolutely everywhere in this first season of Sex Education, and to the point that you just see houses and it's just haze all over the place, and you can just see the light screaming through almost every angle as well. It's over the top sometimes, but it's kind of fun. So looking at what we got here, for those of you not sure, we have this light coming in from the window, and it's quite neatly defined. Look at what they've got going on here. They've wound this blind down a little bit, so that is acting as a cutter. They got the curtains on either side as well, acting to diffuse and just take a little bit the edge off, shape. So when you're blasting light in like this, if your character's right next to the window that you're blasting light in from, actually shaping that light off could be really tricky, and it would just fly all over the place. By using something which is already in your scene, you can get around that and make it seem a little bit more natural. But the edges of everything, they're super hot, so that window is just gone and everything else is just on fire. Over to the other side just here, we're catching quite a lot of reflected light all down these posters and in the wall just there, and that is coming from whatever is illuminating Otis's arm just here, because we've already established this light coming in from over this way when we were looking at him lying down with the top-down shot, so that's not a surprise, but that is also then probably catching in some of this area as well. Over here we have a little bit of down happening on the pillar on this side, and we can see some shadowing over here, all this stuff. He's got like a drum kit, something in the corner there. That's all catching from the light which is coming over this way, so casting all of those shadows on the wall on these things and just illuminating all of this as well, although it's quite down in level. Now we do actually learn in a moment that there is a window pretty much here just on this side of the room, but at the moment it's not really playing all that much on what we're seeing, but when we do cut to the next shot we're going to see that it's creating a massive shaft of light as well, so it kind of should be, but this creates a nicer scene having this all crafted out so that we get down and light and shaft and just here, otherwise it would bleach out a bit, I feel. Now I do dig how they do a lot of their day interiors, and just looking at the tone of the wood, it kind of takes on a silvery quality when it's being hit with that light. So that is worth paying attention to, because we do have versions of these sets at night and the tone of the wood changes because it's being lit from inside and the angle that the light is hitting it is a little bit flatter, so we tend to get this more matte, deeper, richer wood tone, where here it takes on that silvery sheen rather than the woody graininess that it gets later on, which is kind of fun. So from this, use the props that you've got, use the set dressing that you've got, and it's also worth noting at this point, we talked about the production design. This is where we're starting to get a feel of what that production design is giving us. His bed is brown. There aren't white sheets on it, they're kind of brown sheets. Now you do that for two reasons. You don't want things to just appear super bright. Anytime you have a white sheet in a shot, it's going to be the dominant thing. It's bouncing tons of light back. So yeah, you might choose to go with an off-white color to tone it down a bit. But this isn't just the sheet. This is his pillowcase. This is the duvet. This is all of the furnishings in his room. We've got lots of wood. It's very dark. The ceiling is painted greeny kind of, in fact, just call that out there. All of this up here, it's sort of this greeny blue going on. The posters in his room do have little pops of color, but there's nothing crazy, and it's mostly like black and white, and it's falling off because it's at the back of the room. So we're just getting a sense of how they're dressing everything. And even notice, he's in a top and it's kind of popping against everything because it's blue, so he's going to stand out. But he's not dressed in a really bright colour. Obviously he's in bed, but it's muted. It's not crazy. And we see the other window. Now that window is playing across the room, and we've got all of this super, super hot, super bright light, creating those little pops on various bits of his decor and shelves and all the rest of that. We can see more of the ceiling going on just here, and you can see this post is having a light cast onto it, as we discussed before, and that's creating this shadowing up here. Even on the blind, actually, interestingly enough, just extend that down, we're getting that. Same as before, we are using the blind here to act as a cut, so that we're not actually getting too much of everything. So the curtains are flagging just there, the blind is flagging just there, and we get this really neatly defined area of light coming in, which isn't going to overpower everything. So it's a very good way, if you've got your room filled with haze, to create a really nicely defined, crisp shaft of light. If you open it up too much, the light starts flying around all over the place, it bounces off things, and you lose the contrast, because in order to see any shaft of light, you need contrast between dark and light, and it's the light hitting the particles in the air which is going to illuminate it. Also, and this one's obvious for people who know, but maybe if you don't know, so you really need to be backlighting haze, and that goes for any kind of particle in the air. So if you're trying to light rain and you need the light to really pick out the rain, you got to backlight it. If you need snow to really pop out, you got to backlight it. So anything that you're doing like this, having the light coming in behind or off to the side, but never flat on, because as soon as you're flat on, you're not going to create the contrast between the edges of those particles in the air and the darker background. That's what's really going to lift it out for you. Apart from that, we've got more concessions to the fact this is a very stylized set dressing. We've got this old TV up here. We've got this kind of old heater down here. Even his desk is sort of 70s, kind of A-plan style desk going on. It's all feeling very retro. Just going to clear all this off. We've got light catching Otis nicely just down his face. And that is from the same direction as before. Whether they've finessed that light or whether they've in fact just kept it the same, I'm not sure. But it works. He pops against the background, and he's wearing that blue top. Helps him to stand out, because if you look at his skin tone, his skin is going to be roughly the same color as the wood. So if you had him in another thing which was browny or yellowy or orangey, he's just going to meld into this mass of warm tones that are there. So the blue helps to lift him out a bit within that scene. Okay, so he's finished his subterfuge just here, laying out all his stuff. And it's interesting, actually, in the right-hand side, I don't know if that's a magazine and if that's the magazine he's grabbed, but on the right-hand side of frame just here, we've got a little discrepancy if you watch between the two shots. See that? Something jumps out, but maybe it's what he's grabbed. I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyway, just found that interesting. Moving downstairs, the decor again. I'm going to be calling out the decorations all the way through this because it just is absolutely everywhere. So it's a very 70s feel. Everything in here is just screaming 70s. All of these lampshades, or the wallpaper, the picture frames, the furniture just there. That again, that kind of A-plan look on that. This sofa, the kind of brown leather chair just there and just there. Even the pot plant and the pot just here, and painting on the wall, brown curtains again, the fruit bowl, chairs just here, even the kind of worktop is so 70s feeling, yellowy kind of cup. It's just all over the place. The entire vibe is sort of 70s, 80s. His shirt, my goodness. If you told me that this was set in the 70s up to this point, I would believe you. It's only when we start to get into the narrative and find that it's actually modern and they're using phones and all the rest of it, that we see that it is a quasi-modern piece. And we're going to talk more about that as we go through, but it's fascinating to look at. Now, lighting-wise, get rid of all of this, we've got a lot coming in, but we can see actually out of the window just here, we can catch a little bit of the hillside. And I reckon that probably this is the real location. I don't think that this is a set. I think they've actually used the interiors of that chalet for this. Very bright. We're not picking up any shafts particularly, although there is definitely some hard light coming in, catching on that curtain just there. Now, aside from this, all of the practicals that we've got up here are illuminated. And this is an interesting choice for a day interior, because you kind of have to decide what you're going for. If you're saying that it's dark inside and you need light to be able to see things, that's one thing. If you're saying that actually we just want to have the lights because we like the way they look, that's another thing. Here, I think that they do play during various scenes on certain things. So you might have a light playing on the background, and you can see up here, it is actually lighting that. I think that is this fixture, and they all do look quite hot. It's not like they're super down compared to what the ambient level is. They do really seem like they're emitting some light, and you can pick up on various pops throughout the scenes we're going to be looking at. We've got another shaft of light coming in from the stairs just here, lighting up down there. I'm not entirely sure where that would come from. I don't know whether we've seen a window on that side or not, but that's fine. And then on the walls, you can see this is just flat out with those shadows being cast from the window just there. Got the shadow on this side. So all of the direction of the light really just here is coming in like that. Otis is kind of down on this side, but again, not super down. And then equally, we've got more light on, goodness, I can't remember, Gillian Anderson, whatever Otis's mum's name is, on this side. She's got more light on that side of her face, which is intriguing because it's implying that there's more light coming down the stairs here than there is coming from the window here for her. But again, it is that side light, it looks good, and they do really let them play in these scenes. They walk around, they move through the space, and that could be challenging. If anyone's had an experience trying to light a bigger area and have talent move through it, it really requires some thought, especially if you're going for a very defined aesthetic like they are just here. Slightly wider version of that shot from a different angle. We get to see a couple of different things. Look at this phone. Look at that cord. Has anyone watching this video ever had a call on a phone with a cord that long? I remember it used to be a thing, so you could move around and you'd be holding the phone maybe, but they just got a long cord here. So showing my age. Got some more pops down here and another window just there. All of these are absolutely blazing, and we can see that aberration just green down the edge on that side again, because it's right on the edge of the lens. As we get to the center of the lens, you notice it less. And there are some other characteristics of these lenses that you're going to see as we go through. It's not a perfect set. I mean, look at what's going on here. It's kind of real. We've got all of this down here, dings and stuff in the floorboards and on the wall. It really does feel like a natural environment. In fact, it is. I mean, the chalet where they film this is a real place. It's a holiday house. You can go, you can rent it. So that's all fine. The way she's dressed, again, blue. She's popping out where Otis has gone to brown. So fascinating that when they've introduced this character, she comes down the stairs, down in the light. She's dressed in blue, very striking figure, and is the most obvious thing within these scenes. And then we've got her boyfriend of the day coming down the stairs as well. Catching a lot of light from this direction, down the side of her face. So it's saying that there's a window on this side, and that's illuminating her more than whatever's going on just here. But we can definitely see all of that slightly orangey tone light. They are balancing between daylight and tungsten just here. So these do feel more towards tungsten, but not entirely tungsten. And then the daylight is a little bit cooler than it, but they don't feel like it is completely like 5600 to 3200 shift. It's a little bit subtler than that, I feel. And next, going to the breakfast table, I believe. Ah, yeah, this is cool. Moving between these two shots, we can see steam rising out of the mug. And remembering what I said a moment ago about those shafts of light, we do have this hazy shaft of light coming in. But what it's really picking out just here is the steam in her mug. And that's incredibly difficult to do, actually, getting really nicely defined steam coming out of anything, especially if it's live and you've got to have someone pour something and move it around. You might even go as far as to add it in post, because it's just challenging to do it a number of times, constantly have it hot enough that it's going to steam, and have your talent handling really hot things and pouring really hot things and doing it again and again and again in a scene. But that looks really cool, makes it feel really alive, and because we've got the light coming in from this direction here, it's perfect for catching that. Now, they do something here, and they do it a number of times, and it's a really graceful way of cheating the light that we're getting. So if you look down here, we've got, sorry Julian, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, we've got hard light down the front. That's going to be from really crisp source, something able to throw. You're talking HMI, you're talking something with a Fresnel lens on, so you can really focus it in and get a nice collimated beam of light. That's what that's doing. But look at her face. Her face is not that. Her face down here is soft and smooth and creamy all the way to there. We've got some light on this side for her face, so it is shaped. And then on the other side, we are just going off to a downside. Again, down in the context, this is going to be different from a lot of other TV shows, but it still is there, and it's not like sitcom level Friends completely flat. So we've got shaping, but it's soft. She's not catching completely hard light. In fact, I wonder if I roll between the two. Yeah. You can definitely see as she moves through the light, she's cutting the beams as she moves. There's a little beam just here, which is getting cut. Just watch that as we move between them. So how do they do this? I think that this and the other example we're going to look at in a second, they've taken a really focused beam of light, shot it through the window, used that to get all their shafts and the haze and all the rest of it, and then they very carefully flagged it and cut it and put a silk so that we're getting a soft light. Either they've cut the beam and they're silked it so that it's soft at the top and really crisply defined from there down, or they've added another light in and they've just flagged off that or focused or you barn doored down the beam of light so that it's not playing on the face, and then they brought in another soft light to play on her face to give you that nice soft flattering light when they need it up here. Really interesting way of approaching it though, because if that was sunlight and that was coming in, you wouldn't necessarily be getting all of this on a face like that. It wouldn't work like that. And they do it a few more times, which makes me think it's not a coincidence. Okay, take all of that down. Oh yeah, and we've got this fixture just here, practical, playing on the wall. So that practical is giving enough level. Either they've put bulbs in these and they're really pushing out a lot of level, or they've managed to shoot at quite a high ISO. They're using quite a sensitive camera, and they've managed to use a normal bulb in there. I kind of doubt it, just because it would be so much effort to do that. I think they probably use some kind of high-powered bulb within this fixture. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe they've gone with a sensitive camera, but yeah. At this point we move to Otis's mum, Jean, she's called Jean, and she is in her office study with her clients. Got all of this light coming in down here, and that's motivating everything for her. But looking at the direction, it's actually coming in from here for her. So although we've got this light just here which sort of motivates her being lit from that side, it's mostly coming from this direction. And there is another window over that side, but it would be a lot flatter to her, I think, if that was the case, that they were actually using that. Apart from that, we've got more brown wood. I mean, just everything here is brown wood. There's this nice spot where the sun's hitting down here. I'm going to do this in red so that it's just obvious. So we've got all of that down there. Got all of these kicks and pops and hard light again all over the chair. So this is super hard. Look at the shadow. Look at the shadow. It's all really hard until you get to about here, and then it starts to soften up. And when you get to her face, again, we've got lovely soft light on her face, and it's actually quite flattering. But it's really, really subtly done, really carefully positioned. And then over here, we're back to having hard light coming in for those shadows again. We've got another window in the back, so we've got a bit of layering going on, and we can see all of that haze and fringing and stuff, all that good stuff going down. Take those off. cut to a reverse shot just here, I believe. Okay, so she looks up now, and we get to see a little bit what's going on in her glasses, and you can actually make out, if you look in the glasses, something on this side and this side just here. There is definitely a frame or something in there. I'll zoom in on that a little bit, but you can see in her eye there's the catch light, and there's that greeny haze. Anyone who wears glasses with a coating will know that. That's where you get sort of reflection cutting across the glasses. But you can definitely see on her face the shape that they've got lights on that side. It's soft. The transition between the sides of her face here is really gentle. Look at her fingers just here. They are super bright compared to her face. So all of that light, look at that. But then her arm is a little bit less, and then moving up to her face, she's got a lovely soft ratio. So they're definitely cheating all of this light. Okay, and then our clients down here, being hit side with the window, everything is coming in sidey for them. So he's being hit on the side of his face. He's getting a little bit from that window as well. She's getting a really defined nose shadow just there, coming across. It's okay, they're not designed to be in this shot to look fantastic. They're just designed to be an average couple that she is counseling. And he's getting far more level than she is. Looking down at this side of his face, you can see all of this going on. And his jacket and his hand just there. All the way down there. On the side of her face, level is much reduced because she is much further away from the source. I'm going to call that. And then off down to darkness in the corner. It's interesting how the set design and the character design even plays to these incidental characters as well. She's dressed in brown. She's got this cardigan on. I mean, it's such a stylized choice. And he's in sort of blues with this old school kind of little diamond pattern jumper on and a tie underneath the jumper. Just fascinating the way that they've done it. Okay. That is going to be a good place to leave it right now. At this point in the first episode, we start to follow Eric and Otis's journey to school, and there's going to be lots of different environments in the school, lighting-wise and set dressing-wise, and we're going to cover that in the next installment of the Cinematography Breakdowns. If you like this, please consider subscribing because we're going to be doing lots more of these, and if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments below. I do try and answer any questions that we get on these videos. Till next time.